President Cyril Ramaphosa says the social relief grant introduced to cushion the economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns will be extended. The grant was established in 2020 and has been extended a number of times, with the last deadline having been set for March 2023. Ramaphosa says the 350 Rand grant will be continued to mitigate the effects of load shedding and the rising costs of living. Now, Isobel Frye, Executive Director of Social Policy Initiative, joins me in studio. Isobel, thank you so much for your time. So, of course, a lot of mixed reaction for the State of the Nation address in general. Let's now zoom in on the social relief grant. I mean, we know why it was introduced. I mean, it was introduced, for one, to cushion the economic effects of COVID-19, as we've just heard. So now it will be extended. Some obviously saying that it's great that it continues, but it does create some form of lack of sustainability for those that are receiving it. So let's get your reaction then on those comments and also on just the extension itself.
Sure. So thanks very much for the invitation. And as you say, it was a really mixed bag of reactions. I think, firstly, to begin with, we have to deal with the reality of where we are. We're in a country that has 43% unemployment. We have many adults in households whose only income have been the child support grants and the old age pensions. In a country with a constitution that says everybody is entitled to, not just if you're a woman who has a child, but every adult as well. So with the 2020 lockdown, I was part of the team that said to the president, as part of the NEDLAC negotiations for the lockdown, adults need to have income. And so we are delighted that it has been extended. In fact, the Minister of Finance in the MTBPS last October indicated that he was penciling in, I like this phrase, it's very old-fashioned, penciling in, for the next 2 years, in fact. So I think, firstly, to begin with, that there is continuity is good. Our concern is the amount, the 350, because we know that it's half the food poverty line. From our perspective, from the research that we've done at SPI, we've worked out how you can actually look at stimulating local economic development from the bottom up, not waiting for big job schemes to sort of filter down, but to actually give people the purchasing power in pocket to be in control of their own lives. And that's what we're looking at. That's what social security is. It's giving people the ability to run their lives and not be dependent on some kind of discretionary handout. And I think we've seen the whole country beginning to look at grants differently. Instead of a charity, but actually seeing them as a grant that enables people to start doing things for themselves.
For the benefit of our viewers, you mentioned that, you know, you would like to see an amount that is higher and above the poverty line. At the moment, it currently stands at a little bit over 600 rands per month, right? So you'd like then to see something a little bit more than that or along those lines. Currently, there are calls for a universal, a kind of basic grant income, you know, and a lot of people are calling for something around an amount of 1,500. But we know, you know, the situation may not necessarily change because we know the economic situation our country is currently under. But as you've said, we also on the other end know that the unemployment numbers are extremely high. So where then do we have middle ground in terms of what we have now? The SRD is 350 rands. It's better than nothing. But the poverty line of 600 rands per month is something that could potentially, you know, be implemented. So where's the middle ground then for government and obviously for those people who are desperate for that grant?
So the research that we've done has been modeled on a universal basic income grant attached to the upper bound poverty line, which is at 1,497, so say 1,500. And that's really the amount that we've seen has been able to make a difference in a turnaround. And the point is that the universal basic income grant, why it's so good is that it includes everybody. For people who are earning, it gets tax backed. So I think that creates a social protection floor. And in fact, the president last night said that every South African was entitled to a minimum income floor. The debate is where that minimum lies. Our point is that it shouldn't be a charitable handout. It needs to be scientifically worked out as to what the economy needs to kick the economy going, so that not only is bread put on the table, but that you can have in 3 to 5 years' time a multiplier that looks at stimulating economic growth of an additional 3 to 4% per annum, because that's what we really need. We can no longer dish out little bits, small which doesn't actually build anything. And I think that's the challenge. And I think as we get to the end of this administration of the ANC, we've seen in December that conference adopted the basic income grant. And it is about saying grants are not a charity. They're both a right, but also globally, we've seen a move to say that the world of work is changing. So incomes are not necessarily only through wages. How else in a society do we distribute income so that it stimulates demand, so that we have a circular economy going? And I think South Africa needs to be applauded for really being at the cutting edge of seeing how this is done for the developing world.
Why is that so difficult to understand? I mean, earlier I asked you the question of, what do you think of those who comment and say, for instance, these basic grants are not sustainable, and some are arguing that, South Africa has enough grants as it is. We already know that 29 million people receive welfare payments as an example. But why is it difficult to comprehend that, in order to create sustainability, in fact, in the economy, is to make sure that adults, especially working adults, get some form of stipend from government?
I think a legacy of apartheid. Under apartheid, there was a welfare state for whites, but it wasn't extended to people of color. And so that's firstly, the point is that income has always been related to jobs. There is a psychological aspect that says jobs bring dignity, and that's certainly true. I'm not sure whether extended public works brings dignity, but we need to look at a variety of options. If you look at a variety of European countries, their grants are the underlying guarantee of income so that nobody goes hungry. And it's not to say that people who get grants become lazy. In fact, the research we've done has shown that people who have grants are able to get jobs far more easily, because if you've got a guaranteed income coming in, you can take a risk. You can look for a job rather than use that last 15 Rand to buy a loaf of bread. And so that's the point, is that grants unlock the ability, the pathway towards jobs. And I think there's a global swing to the right, a neoliberal swing that says that I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps and so must you. But the incredible impediments of apartheid legacy mean that for many people, there is no accumulated sort of family wealth that people can draw on. And so what we need to see is instead South Africa's a balance sheet. Where does it lie? Does it go to vast amounts of profits? We're the most unequal country in the world. We've got huge amounts of wealth stored away, which is being untapped. Or do we distribute it in an even way, with the state being the even-handed regulator that hands out in forms of the social wage, but also takes from those who have excess and surplus. So we need to see our role as being one united, rather than what I can take for myself. And so one of the things that we've said to the finance minister is that the means testing is an incredibly bad idea from a policy perspective, because it means that you lose that money, you lose that guaranteed income. If you're an informal trader and there's a rainy month coming up, you don't want to lose the small amount that you have. Rather incentivize. So you say, if adults are using this and they're doubling their income, then they can get a small add-on, or they can get 50 Rand airtime or something like that. Turn it into a positive, rather a punitive one, where if you risk anything, you lose it all.
Now, just going back to your mentioning, apartheid and legacy issues in this country. Those are deep-suited social issues, and I'm wondering, because it's taken so long, for government to actually make a decision as it relates to basic income grants, and also, this is testament. The extension of the 350 is testament that there is a need, to support struggling South Africans. What about the roots of the courts? If your argument, which is very, very valid, is that there is a historic issue in South Africa, and that speaks to what happened in apartheid, surely there is some way or form that you could take this to the courts, to compel government to do something about it.
A transitional justice issue, absolutely, and that's where the Constitution comes in. I think the point, a number of civil society organizations are talking about that. Taking government to court, however, is not the best way that you want to go about, because you want to ensure that the whole of the nation is behind it. But it's a very succinct and crisp legal issue. And the point is that it's been something that in negotiations has been raised. I mean, at NEDLAC, we got a constitutional opinion as to how justiciable this would be. So we're just really pleased that without having to go to court, government is there. And as the President said, a lot of work is going into the design. One of the things that we've suggested, because we can see this happening globally, it's worked well, is to pilot small initiatives. Now, looking at Mpumalanga, that's a province that's going to be hit by coal mining unemployment. What we've suggested is have 4 or 5 different pilots running, see what just a basic income grant would do, see what a basic income grant plus a youth employment added to it, but don't take anything for granted. Don't say there's one size that fits all, but see that this is the new mechanism for building that inclusive economy, which we really need.
Isobel, I actually like what you said in terms of getting the country on board as opposed to going the court route, because that is essentially very important. It's actually something that we would like to see more, government taking the confidence of South Africans every time it plans to make something, permanent within its structures. But Isobel, that's all the time we have this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time and for your analysis. Of course, that was Isobel Frye, Executive Director at Social Policy Initiative. Of course, also responding to the social relief grant that has been extended by President Cyril Ramaphosa.